Blog Talk Radio.
Gentlemen, it seems we have a problem. I would like to introduce
Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Investigations Team.
Welcome to another edition of Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Radio. Today's show, we're going to be talking about two strange Japanese cryptids. We're going to be talking about the Kappa and the Hibagon, or Hibagon, however you want to say that. How are you doing today, Nick?
I'm doing fine.
Well, Nick, I was saying, can you get started with today's news stories before we get on to the main topic?
All right. Australian billionaire Clive Palmer has announced plans to build a robotic Jurassic Park. The eccentric mining magnate has ordered more than 100 life-sized mechanical dinosaurs from China for display at his Kulon resort in Australia. Palmer is also currently constructing a replica of the ill-fated Titanic.
That's pretty weird. Well, Nick, what's your opinion about this? You think this is a cool thing? You think it's a big waste of money, a load of crap? What do you think?
Actually, I think it's pretty cool. It allows us to bring history to life and allows people to kind of have a hands-on interaction with history. I think it's really neat. I mean, back when I was a kid, actually, at the Providence Zoo, I believe, it was a zoo in Rhode Island, they actually had a robotic dinosaur park in the zoo as an exhibit, and that was really interesting. Like, we had a robotic T-Rex that looked just like the one from the movie, and I remember it scaring the living daylights out of me. We had raptors and it was pretty crazy. I mean, they shut it down because they couldn't upkeep it with the level of funding they had, but overall I think this park is a good idea because if it's anything like the one I went to as a kid, it'll be great.
The only thing I was wondering is, do they really know the eating habits and all that of all of those dinosaurs that they want to make this correct, or are they just going to get a bunch of dinosaurs and throw them in cages, or how do you think they're going to do it?
They're probably just, again, basing on my childhood experience with the robotic dinosaur park I went to, I believe they're probably just going to try to replicate the environments that these dinosaurs were in. Like, they'll set up like a diorama display, and they'll put in some palm trees and ferns and whatnot, and they'll have the dinosaurs standing there and making noises and moving around and stuff. It's basically what they did in the early 90s when I was a small child. I don't know if they're going to do that now.
Well, here's our next story. Scientists at the Pentagon are looking to use a special tattoo to track vital signs of U.S. soldiers. The unobtrusive and durable biostatistic device would monitor a soldier's condition in the field and track their stress levels in an effort to tackle combat fatigue and other problems. DARPA, as it's called, has initiated a request for research proposals designed to provide a solution using advanced materials that can be attached to the skin like a tattoo. The technology is known as epidermal electronic systems, capable of making sensors from lightweight and unobtrusive materials that are flexible and can be stretched without damaging the device. The The innovative design contains all of the necessary components and a urethane layer about the thickness of a human hair. So the government is trying to make sort of a super soldier, it sounds like, and they're trying to track our soldiers. The only thing I'm wondering is, what if you don't want a tattoo? You have to have this thing attached to you for life because you joined the military type of thing?
Well, this is perfect fodder for any conspiracy theorist. It's not like Nazis tattooed Jews that went into ovens, or kings tattooed people in the Middle Ages to distinguish one group of people from another, or that dictators throughout history have used these things. It's not like they would ever do that. I mean, our dear leaders in the government would never, ever think about doing anything like that. And also, you could get into things like the mark of the beast in the book of Revelation and things like that. I know some people believe in that type of thing, and they could say that this could be the mark of the beast or maybe a sign leading to it. I don't know, but I think it's pretty weird, and I don't really agree with it.
Well, I know that Becky, she knows a lot about this. She reads books on things like that. I don't know. Too bad she was on the show today. We could ask her about it. What do you think? She's pretty knowledgeable on that?
Yeah, she seems pretty knowledgeable about a lot of things in dealing with the paranormal, conspiracy theories, and whatnot. So her input would be really appreciated. But again, she could make it on the show today, probably because of a holiday festivity or whatnot.
Well, Nick, I know you had another news story that you were telling me about earlier. Can you tell us?
The mysterious SARS-like virus that appears to be originating in the Middle East, oh boy, has claimed 2 more victims after people died from infection in Germany and Britain. The death brings 11 to the number of fatalities attributed to the virus, and 6 others have been determined to have been infected by the virus, according to the World Health Organization. Health officials are concerned that SARS-like virus could come to the United States and Canada, and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have alerted state and local health departments to be on the lookout for suspicious illnesses in people who have recently traveled to the Middle East. Another disease originating from a third world hellhole. That's never happened here before in the United States. It's not like we have massive droves of people coming from a third world hell. Oh, wait, maybe we do.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, Nick, I know, what was it, the bird flu, they had the swine flu came from here, or did that come from somewhere else?
The swine flu, I believe,
Japan?
came here. I think it might have come from actually the southern United States. There was a farm that had really bad sanitation, so I think that originated in the U.S., but I'd have to double check.
I know some places in the world even still have the plague. I know you and me were talking about that recently. That would be pretty bad.
Yeah, it wouldn't be good if a bubonic plague outbreak occurred. Actually, it can be found in some animals in the United States. Like, I know the armadillo carries the bubonic plague virus. If you get bitten by an armadillo, you're in pretty big trouble if you don't go to the hospital.
Or you get bitten by a vampire.
Get bitten by Ed Cullen.
Yeah. Well, Nick, I guess we're going to get started with today's topic. I only had a few news stories for today. First one we're going to talk about is the Kappa. This is one of the more interesting animals or creatures that we've had on the show. It's by Tim, one of our other investigators on the BFP panel actually picked this topic. Kappa are typically depicted as roughly humanoid in form, about the size of a child. Their scaly reptilian skin ranges in color from green to yellow or blue. Kappa supposedly inhabit the ponds or rivers in Japan and have various features to aid them in their environment, such as webbed hands and feet. They're sometimes said to smell like fish and can certainly swim like fish. Although their appearance varies from region to region, the most consistent features are a carapace, I think you say that, which is a beak for a mouth, and a plate, which is a flat, hairless region on top of their head that is always wet. And this is regarded as a source of their power, or so the saying goes. This cavity must be full whenever a kappa is away from the water, and if it dries out, people say it will lose its power or even die. So, Nick, do you know anything about kappas, or would you like to make a statement on the carrot piece or whatever, the hole in its head that's always wet or full of water?
It sounds rather weird. I'm vaguely familiar with the Kappa. I've heard legends of it before in the past, but I never really bothered to research it very fully. As to the thing on the head, as the water spot, it would make some type of sense, perhaps, if this animal is a cryptid, and maybe that spot on its head is some sort of a gill, and you need gills to be in water to function, so perhaps the Kappa evolved a spot in its head which can carry water to make a functioning gill. So that's all I could think of for that.
Well, one thing I was kind of thinking was maybe it's not necessarily a bowl of water in a sense on top of its head. Maybe it's just like maybe its head is just shaped funny, and because it's in the water, it's always wet and full of water because the water stays in its head when it comes out. Something like that?
Yeah. I don't know. It just could be the way the head is shaped. I'm not really sure. Again, I'm not super familiar with the Kappa. Guess I'll have a lot to learn today.
Well, one thing I should note, some people say this is an old myth, and some people say this is a living creature. So some of the things that may sound a little odd or a little out there could just be old myth, or you know what I mean.
Well, we all know that there are a lot of stories circulating around the planet, and a lot of these stories can be fictional, and sometimes they have their root in truth.
Mm-hmm.
And it's our job as paranormal investigators to get to the bottom of these stories.
Well, another notable feature in some stories involving the Kappa is that the Kappa's arms are said to be connected to each other through the torso, and they're able to slide from one side to the other. While they are primarily water creatures, they do on occasion go onto land. When they do, that plate I was talking about earlier, they say is covered by a metal cap or some kind of a covering. In fact, in some carnations, Kappa will spend spring in the summer water and the rest of the year in the mountains as a mountain deity. So, Nick, do you think this covering they're talking about in this creature's head, could this be a natural flap of skin or something, or do you really think possibly it uses tools such as a metal covering or wooden covering?
I believe, like I stated a few minutes ago, that this flap is probably something that has a gill in it, and the animal has evolved this precipice to take in water in order for it to walk on land and still be able to breathe. I believe the lungfish actually might use a similar mechanism, but I'm not quite sure. I'd have to go reread my biology textbook.
So you do know of animals, though, that can go in the water or on land and be fine?
Yeah, like I said, the lungfish is a fish that obviously it lives in the water, but it can jump onto land, and it doesn't really walk. It kind of slides on the land with these little flipper fin. I don't know. It's a combination between a foot and a fin, but that's just one example of an animal that breathes underwater, but it also can breathe on land. So,
those salamanders live in the water and on land, or not really?
Salamanders can live in the water. They're amphibians. They always need to be moist. If they dry out, they can die. Same thing for frogs
and turtles.
And turtles, depending on the species, and there are toads that need water constantly. So there's a lot of animals in nature that live on land and water.
It says that Kappa, it said they live all over Japan, but they said that they're most often reported in the Saga prefecture. I don't know if that's like a state or province of theirs. Hey, do you know what that means, Nick? I don't know.
The Saga prefecture? I don't know. It's got to be a Japanese word and term, so I'm not really familiar with it at all.
Well, it said that they live all over Japan. Do you think maybe these creatures, Do you think that these could be people, not necessarily an animal? Maybe it could be some type of a person that was living in the woods or does live in the woods? Or you think it's most likely a creature?
It's most likely a creature. It could be some sort of a hominid, which, I mean, I could reach into evolutionary theory and pull out a very left field theory that some scientists have said it has been suggested that the Kappa legends are based on the Japanese giant salamander, or Hanzaki, aggressive salamander which grabs its prey with its powerful jaws.
So, do you think, because I guess it's saying that the Kappa, it's been responsible, or apparently responsible, for killing people or drowning people. Do you think maybe they could be seeing a giant salamander? Or you think it's kind of like what we always say, people know the difference between a salamander and a humanoid creature?
It's a possibility that there could be a giant salamander. I think I've seen pictures of this thing. I don't know if it's capable of dragging people underwater, though.
Well, it says that people use the sorry, I got a little confused here. People use the Kappa name and the Kappa legend to try to scare children or scare people from going into the waters or waterways. I was going to say, Nick, do you know of any other creatures? I know that they said mermaids, they do the same thing. Sometimes, like the Iron Man of Kerbal, Scotland.
Well, there's urban legends all throughout the world that are told to scare children into behaving. You could even say Santa Claus could be thought of as a legend that is meant to scare people. I can't think of any creatures that live in the water that were told to me, at least. My dad used to tell me about Fingernail Freddy that lived in the cemetery around the corner from my house that I needed to be good, or he would get me. But I've never heard of any aquatic creatures that would come and get me if I was bad.
I was going to say, well, I have another interesting thing. Kappa are usually seen as mischievous troublemakers or trickster figures. Their pranks range from relatively innocent, such as loudly passing gas or looking up women's kimonos, to malevolent, such as drowning people and animals, kidnapping children, and raping women. As water monsters, or as they call them monsters, Kappa have been frequently blamed for drownings, and often they're said to lure people into the water and pull them in with great skill at wrestling. They're sometimes said to take their victims for the purpose of drinking their blood or eating their livers. I don't know how you want to take this one at a time. So, Nick, I know the Kushtaka, which is an Alaskan Eskimo legend cryptid type creature. They said that it drags people into the waters or lures them out there with the sounds of crying children, maybe sailors that need help, different things like that. Does this almost sound like the Kushtaka to you, Nick? Something like that?
Yeah, it sounds similar to the Kushtaka, and a story like that could be shared between the Alaskan people and the Japanese people, because at one point those two lands were connected millions of years ago in Pangaea.
Well, it says that these creatures, they said they might like to drink people's blood or eat their livers. Do you think, some people say that the Kappas live in harmony with people, other people say that they don't like us at all. Do you think maybe they do eat people? Is there a possibility?
They could be carnivorous.
Or maybe they were before and they're not now.
Again, it's hard to separate the wheat from the chaff and the myth from the truth. But these animals, being wild animals, could definitely be carnivorous, and there are other carnivores in nature which eat humans. I'm getting tongue twisted. That eat humans. So I wouldn't exempt this one from that either.
Well, even today, signs warning about Kappa appear by bodies of water in some Japanese towns and villages. Kappa are also said to victimize animals, especially horses and cows. The motif of the Kappa trying to drown horses is found all over in Japan. I guess they said crocodiles. I know they try to drown wildebeest among the other ways they kill them in the wild. I guess it would only be natural for a Kappa, if it is a water-dwelling carnivore, it would try to drown its victims. I didn't look this up, but it would be interesting to see how many unknown drownings occur in Japan in the rivers and waterways. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I think it would be an interesting statistic to look up and find out to see if there's any credence at all to these stories.
Well, Nick, I know there's a myth or a legend. There's more to the legend. I would say, can you read one of the notes here?
In these stories, if a Kappa is caught in the act, it can be made to apologize, sometimes in writing. This usually takes place in a stable, where the Kappa attempted to attack the horse, which is considered to be the place where the Kappa is most vulnerable.
Let's say, Nick, judging by that note, I know that's probably most likely a myth that the creature would apologize, but this actually sounds like it's an intelligent creature, though. If judging by that, if it could write or if it could somehow speak or apologize, what do you think, Nick? Maybe you think it could be like some sort of missing link creature, maybe, if it has its own language and knows how to write and all that?
Well, like I was saying earlier, there's scientists that say that the first humans, this was back when the mermaid thing got really popular. Around the time we did our show about it, we were ahead of everybody else. I don't want to brag, but when we did our show and the time after that, scientists were saying, well, there may be mermaids because there was a lot of flooding that happened in the world at the turn of the Ice Age, and some of the humans got stuck in the oceans and evolved gills and tail fins and whatnot. So basically what I'm saying is maybe the Kappa could be some sort of an evolved caveman that lived in the oceans during the turn of the Ice Age, which I think is very improbable, but the theory's there.
Well, it says Kappa, as I mentioned earlier, they're ravishers of women. An 18th century ukiyo-e image, it says it depicts a Kappa raping a diver underwater. It says there's another one that records the beliefs from the Tono area about women being accosted and even impregnated by the Kappa. Apparently it says that the offspring in history, it said they're known to be so repulsive that they're generally buried or killed. Like Nick was saying, if maybe they are some type of a weird humanoid type creature, maybe they can reproduce with people. What do you think about that?
Sounds a little weird.
Do you think that there's a possibility is that a Kappa could reproduce with a human?
I suppose if everything's along the lines of a human, yeah, I'm sure they probably can. Hopefully, like maybe they're a subhuman species or something.
Yeah, if they're a subhuman species that went into the waters at the turn of the 19th century, at the turn of the Ice Age, then there's a very slim possibility that they genetically could be close enough to us to where they would be able to breed with us. I think it's a scientific possibility, but I think you'd have a better chance of starting a car and the engine spontaneously freezing. I just don't think it's a very good chance.
Well, there's three ways it says if you're confronted by a Kappa that you could escape. The first one, it says a Kappa, for one reason or another, obsess over being polite. I don't know how they got this, but it says if a person were to gesture a deep bow, the Kappa would be more than likely to return it. In doing so, the water kept in the lily pad-like bowl in their head I mentioned earlier, it says it would spill out and the Kappa would be rendered unable to leave the bow position until the person refilled it from the water from where it lived. If a person were to refill it, it's said that the Kappa would serve them for all eternity, or at least give them some nice gestures for a while. I don't know, the whole bowl, the bowl in the head thing's interesting. Like Nick said, it could be gills maybe, and it gets covered up by some kind of a natural covering. But, I don't know, the whole bowing thing's kind of odd. It's probably, maybe it's the old myth, I don't know. But anyways, part number 2. It says, a similar weakness of the Kappa is in some legends, is their arms. They can easily be pulled from their body, supposedly. If their arm is detached, they will perform favors or share knowledge in exchange for its return. And it says once it's in possession of its arms, somehow they could reattach them or regrow their arms. Well, Nick, you said you know of some creatures that could regrow appendages once they're lost, like tails or arms.
Oh, yeah. There are different types of reptiles. A lot of different kinds of lizards are able to regrow. A lot of lizards are able to regrow their tails after the tail is broken off. So I know that's definitely possible. I think octopus can grow their legs back after they're broken off. Starfish. Actually, that's how starfish breed. A starfish, if you break a leg off of a starfish, a clone grows back in the place of the broken arm. So there's definitely things like this in nature, but however, I don't know if breaking an arm off of a Kappa would make them suddenly turn into polite gentlemen.
Well, most animals would be enraged if you hurt them like that, you would think.
Yeah, most animals would be enraged. It also says Kappa have been driven away using their aversion to variously iron, sesame, or ginger.
Well, I was actually on the Talk with Vince show yesterday, and Lady Burnwin, she's a woman I met yesterday, she said that sesame or ginger is a way that you could kind of draw, that supposedly you could get evil spirits out of your house with that too, is what she was saying yesterday.
Yeah, there's all types of stories which say various herbs can scare away evil. I mean, just look at vampire legends, which says wolfbane and garlic can be used to repel vampires. So, yeah, there's stories of herbs and spices dating back. Yeah.
We had a show about vampires, and they said that some people were saying, it was the Yangshi, the hopping zombie of, was it China or Korea, whatever that was. But yeah, they said that if you put up ginger or if you put up certain types of corn, they said this creature would run away from that. But anyways, it says Kappas are curious about human civilization. It says some people think that they can understand and speak languages. They may even befriend human beings in exchange for gifts and offerings such as noodles or cucumbers, which is the only food that Kappa are known to enjoy more than human flesh, they say. Well, Nick, do you think that maybe these creatures really do like cucumbers and all that, or you think maybe that's more legend?
That's probably more legend. It sounds a lot like the aliens in the movie, what is it, Area 9 or whatever? Mm-hmm. Where they only like cat food, and you can control them using it.
Well, it says that speaking of cucumbers, it says, in some regions, it's encouraged to eat cucumbers before swimming as a form of protection against the Kappa. And some people say that that's a bad thing to do. Some people say it's good. I thought it was worth mentioning. It says there's a famous cucumber-filled sushi roll called the Kappa Maki, which is named after the Kappa. I guess they eat it over there. I know you eat sushi. You know about that, Tim?
No, I was just saying, that's interesting. I never knew that it's named after the Kappa.
Nick, I remember Nick saying that he went out for sushi with Sabrina, a girl he was seeing recently. He said they ate a Kappa Maki downtown.
Yeah, actually I did have it at this restaurant in downtown Las Vegas on the Strip. And it wasn't that bad. It was mostly just rice and cucumber with, actually no, it was a vegetarian roll, so there was no meat in it. It was just like minced cucumber and some spices rolled up with some rice. It was pretty good.
Well, Japanese parents sometimes write the names of their children and themselves on cucumbers and toss them into the water, believed to be inhabited by Kappa, to try to, I guess, feed the Kappa, or maybe it's just a good luck charm type thing. Well, so that to me shows that people in the area are still afraid of these Kappa creatures, or they still find them intriguing. What do you think, Nick?
Well, yeah, that's definitely a curious thing to notice. in America, there's, things that people do which date back to a long time ago. More often not than they do it in order to just kind of in a superstitious way. They don't do it because they really mean it. Like, there's people like Catholics who don't even practice the faith anymore, and they'll have something happen to them, and then they'll sign themselves with a cross just out of habit, and they kind of do it as a good luck charm type of thing. So I think throwing cucumbers in the water is a very similar practice for the Japanese.
I couldn't have said that better, actually. It says there's shrines dedicated to the Kappa. I guess people kind of worship them. I don't think they do so much now, but I guess back then they did in the olden days. I guess these creatures, they must have been, do you think that they were seeing something, though, Nick? Because why would they have made shrines to these beings, or why would they have all of these superstitions about these if supposedly they didn't exist? What do you think, Nick?
Well, I think the stories could probably, again, I think they have a root in truth, and that's what a lot of folklore is just rooted in truth. There's probably some type of strange creature that somebody's seen at one point, and they, started telling stories about it, and then over the centuries, the story of the Kappa came to fruition. So I basically think that's what happened.
Yeah. Well, I think that when you're speaking about these temples, you say, okay, well, some of the Hindus, they worship the Yeti, and you go into Tibet or Nepal, you see people worshiping the Yeti. You've seen it, Nick, with prayer flags, and they have big ordeals over this. Some people even claim they have a Yeti scalp. Some people say it was a goat's head. I'm not sure. But, well, Nick, I know you were talking something about a festival with the Kappa that you read. Can you tell us about that?
There are also some festivals meant to placate the Kappa in hopes of receiving a good harvest, some of which still take place today. These festivals generally took place during the 2 equinoxes of the year when the Kappa traveled from the rivers to the mountains and vice versa.
So basically what you're saying is these Kappa, I know that we mentioned earlier that sometimes they live in the water, sometimes they live on land. Well, sorry, there I got sidetracked. Well, all right, so they live in the water, they live on land. So you hold these festivals in celebration, or you think that's more of like a fear trying to get away from them?
It's probably a festival meant to please the Kappa in order to bring about some sort of desired result. We see this in the history of all religions and various cultures throughout the world. Just for instance, in ancient Jewish culture, you can read this in the Bible, they had most of their festivals were actually harvest festivals because the people were farmers and they would sacrifice wheat and some cows and whatnot to God in order to receive a good harvest. So I think the idea is very similar here.
Mm-hmm. Well, Nick, I guess we're going to get started with our next strange cryptid from Japan. But before we do that, we are going to go on a quick commercial break, and you're listening to BFP Radio.
Use Ajax, the foaming cleanser. Clean pots and pans, just like a whiz.
Ajax cuts grease faster than any other leading cleanser.
You stop paying the elbow tax when you start cleaning with Ajax.
Ajax really polishes as it cleans.
So use Ajax, the foaming cleanser. Flush the dirt right down the drain. My gosh, there.
They sure work hard, don't they, Barney?
Yeah? I hate to see them work so hard.
Yeah, me too. Let's go around back where we can't see them.
Gee, we ought to do something, Fred. Okay. How's about taking a nap? Hey, I got a better idea. Let's take a Winston break.
That's it. Winston is the one filter cigarette that delivers flavor 20 times a pack. Winston's got that filter blend.
Yeah, Fred. Filter blend makes the big taste difference, and only Winston has it. Up front where it counts. Here, ahead of the pure white filter. Winston packs rich tobaccos specially selected and specially processed for good flavor in filter smoking.
Yeah, buddy, Winston tastes good like cigarette juice.
On BFP Paranormal Radio. Well, we're going to get started with our next cryptid I mentioned earlier. It's called the Hibagon or the Hibagon, however you want to call it. We'll call it the Hibagon. Well, the Hibagon is, or Hinagon, as some people call it, is the Japanese equivalent to the North American Bigfoot or Himalayan Yeti. The Hibagon is described as a black creature with white hands and large white feet, standing about 5 feet tall. Sightings have been reported in forest mountain regions of the country, around Mount Hiba in the Hiroshima province or prefecture, and has been said to resemble a gorilla. I'll say, Nick, the Hibagon, do you think that something like a Bigfoot or a Yeti, like they're saying, could exist on the main island of Japan?
Yeah, Bigfoot definitely could probably exist on the main island. There is a large deal of land that is not settled on the island. Most of the people, I believe, are situated on the southern half of the island, while the north still has a great deal of wilderness.
Well,
yeah.
I know they said the Saga prefecture, I guess that's like a province or a state to them, that's where the Kappa are supposed to live. I wonder, because they said that's the Hiroshima areas where this thing lives, primarily, that is. Do you think maybe... I wish I had a map because I could see which, if they're similar or found near each other. Nick, while I find a map really quick, can you talk to our audience about, can you talk to our audience about possibly how the environment in Japan is similar to the environment where the Bigfoot lives in North America?
Well, in Japan, there's a great deal of forests which harbor some of the world's weirdest creatures. Like, there's a giant wasp that lives in Japan, which, I don't know if anybody, Tim, have you ever seen pictures of those giant wasps that live in Japan?
No, to be honest, I've never heard of them. I've heard of them. I haven't seen any pictures of them, though.
Oh, okay. Well, basically, there's these large forests in Japan which have these wasps and other weird animals. And, quite frankly, these environments could definitely be an environment which houses something like the Hibagon. I definitely think that is a statement and anybody could agree with.
Yeah. Yeah,
You're
anybody that believes would have to see that it's real. You know what I mean? Like it'd be an environment suitable for it.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, there's a good diversity of vegetation and animals in these environments, which would give this creature a steady diet of...
This is where the Kappa lives. The Kappa lives kind of on its own little island-looking thing, and the Hibagon lives literally right on the coast facing towards where the Kappa supposedly lives. So they kind of live in similar environments from what it sounds like. What do you think, Nick, from what I just showed you?
Yeah. Just by looking at the map rather quickly, it does seem that the Hibagon and the Kappa definitely live close to each other, probably within a few hundred miles. I'm not sure how big the island is around because the map wasn't drawn to scale.
Well, here's more Hibagon descriptions here. The Hibagon has a large nose, large, deep, glaring eyes, and is covered in bristles at times, I guess, from the trees. Theories to account for this cryptid range from a gorilla, a wild man, or a deserter from the Japanese army to an individual ravaged by atomic radiation from the Hiroshima attack. Out of those descriptions, Nick, which one do you think is the most plausible? Look, 2 or 3.
I think that the Hibagon is most likely a hominid, just like the other sightings of Sasquatch throughout the world. A deserter or a mutated man sounds quite out there in the left field, so to say. I'm going to go with, that's saying it nicely, I'm going to go with the Hibagon being some sort of a hominid or an ape-like creature.
Well, Nick, there's an interesting paper you have sitting here. Can you read what you wrote down and talk a little bit about it?
The Hibagon is much smaller than its North American counterpart, being most commonly reported at around 5 feet in height and estimated as weighing about 180 pounds. In many respects, the Hibagon is more ape-like than the Sasquatch as well. It is often described as looking like a gorilla or giant monkey, and although it is most often seen moving bipedally, many reports tell of the creature moving about on all fours quite easily. Some eyewitnesses even claim that the animal was hopping along like a monkey. Other notable features are the Hibagon's apparent lack of fear of people and the absence of any sort of vocalizations in the reports.
Well, Nick, they said that this thing's smaller, kind of like the Orang Pendek or the Bukit Timah monkey man in a sense that we've talked about on the show. So you think maybe it could be a smaller type animal because the environment prohibits it from being some giant beast like the Yeti.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think that the animal, the Hibagon, could be smaller than the North American Sasquatch due to its environment, as I've harped time and time again on our various other Bigfoot shows. Like, for instance, I said that the Orang Pendek is most likely small due to its diet consisting of mostly small things, while the North American Sasquatch has a great deal of things to feed on, sometimes even reported having taken down moose and deer. It allows them to grow much larger. So the Hibagon probably eats very small things like the Orang Pendek and other Polynesian Bigfoot do.
Well, even if you think of the Japanese people in general, usually they're not that tall. They're small people usually too. And they said this thing hops around like a monkey. So this thing sounds like it's like you hear some Bigfoots are more ape-like, some are more human-like. This one sounds definitely more ape-like. Well, I have a couple of sighting reports that I've collected I'd like to talk about.
So, Jeremy, when we make a Bigfoots Pad music video, is it going to be the Hibagon hop or the Yangtze hop we're going to do?
The Yangtze hop.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, we have to tie our feet together. All right. Let's go on to the sighting.
Well, I'm just going to go over these one by one, I guess, until we run out of time here. But a sighting from 1972 reports the creature has a chocolate brown face and is covered with brown hair. And it's said to have a deep, glaring eyes. In 2 reports by someone named Mr. Sazawa and Mrs. Harada, the creatures took no hostile action from their 4 armed residents intent on hunting it. So whatever this creature is, it's a dark chocolate brown, and apparently it means no harm to the people. Well, here's some more reports. I have a couple of really quick ones, then we'll talk about it. Japanese Boy Scouts claim to find a 25 centimeters or 10-inch long by 6-inch wide footprints. As with most hominid creatures, the Hibagon is said to have the most unpleasant stench like a dead human body. So, Nick, 10 inches long, is that within the realm of possibility for a Bigfoot over here, or you think that's relatively small for the width of the footprint?
Well, 10 inches long would be equivalent to like a size 10 or 11 on a normal human being. But 15 or 6 inches wide, yeah, it sounds relatively small for Sasquatch, especially over here. But, I mean, well, we have heard stories of types of hominids that are quite large and smelly, and they maybe even in the Las Vegas area. I'm not sure. The sand yeti has been reported to do this.
Well,
so,
they reported the stench. The stench is very common in Bigfoot sightings. Like you were saying, you even heard of some stories of the sand yeti having a stench down here in southern Nevada.
Well, and other large apes too, like gorillas and things too.
Well, Nick, do you think that the Hibagon would have a stench? Would it be any different?
Most likely, because animals, I mean, a few select animals bathe, if you want to call it that. Like birds will go down into the water and soak up in the water. And raccoons will wash their hands before and after they eat, and that type of thing in a stream. But the last time I checked, monkeys didn't do that, so I think that a Sasquatch definitely would have a smell.
Well, I'm going to get started on with some more sightings here real quick. It says the Hibagon are sighted in rice paddies, and it says that in December, this is right after some of the rice paddy sightings were seen. It says they found strange tracks that I was mentioning earlier in the snow of Mount Hiba. More tracks would be uncovered in the following years. When one of the longest one of the largest trackways or several tracks that they casted went 300 meters. That's pretty far, isn't it?
Yeah, that is pretty far.
And it says the Hibagon's usually seen in the summer months more than in the winter or the fall. Why is this, Nick?
Well, it's due to a couple of obvious things. One, more people are out and about during the summer, so there's a greater deal of a person seeing something because there's more people out. Then also, animals are more active during the summer than they are during the winter, so that increases the chance of a Hibagon sighting.
Well, in July of 1970, the creature was spotted by a truck driver. The driver reported seeing a gorilla-like creature on two legs stride across the field near a dam, run across the road, and disappear into the woods. And I guess apparently a few days later, the creature reappeared again. This time, out of a bush and long grass in front of a surprised farmer. He described the Hibagon as being as tall as an average man, covered in black fur, and having a grotesque face with piercing, intelligent eyes. So this creature, I hate to say it, almost sounds like what I've seen in California, because the Bigfoot that me and Brent seen wasn't strong. It was the size of a regular-sized man, but it's not the same thing, of course. But what do you think, Nick? Do you think that sounds like something a Bigfoot would do, hang out in farm fields eating crops, something like that?
Yeah, definitely. I think a Sasquatch would be spotted in a farm eating crops. We know that the Orang Pendek is notorious for stealing farmers' crops down there in the Polynesian islands, so I think the Hibagon would be similar.
Well, speaking of crops, it says and some elementary school kids seen it, and one sighting, it was eating wild mushrooms from the forest. And apparently it said that it's always seen there. It was always seen there. So whatever it is, it's at least eats plants. Well, something I was kind of curious about. Tim, do you think this thing would be a omnivore, a carnivore? Maybe it's smaller because it only eats plants type of thing? I don't know.
Well, I would, if it's anything like any other reported great apes or Bigfoot or anything, I'm sure it'd be an omnivore because I'm sure it'd probably be able to eat only what it could find. Like if it's out in the forest, I'm sure if it catches small game, it'd probably eat that. Meanwhile, like for example, we know it eats mushrooms at least and crops, so I think it'll take whatever it can get.
In the year of 1974, including a series of prints found on August 21st in the Mountain Valley, the footprints were 30 centimeters long, which is not as large for a squatch, but some of the biggest prints found for an alleged Hibagon.
That's an interesting note, Nick. So what you're saying is you think those are a lot bigger than the one that we reported earlier. I'm not very good with centimeters and meters, but they said that was one of the biggest ones ever seen.
Yeah.
Well, something I would like to bring up, Nick. Someone's asking us in one of our chat rooms on Facebook. Do you think this could be an escaped great ape or maybe a macaque?
I don't believe so, because if it was just a single or even a very small population of escaped great apes, they probably would die off rather quickly in the wild, and people would not have been seeing them for hundreds, if not thousands of years. I think that really destroys any notion that this could be an escaped ape.
Tim, what do you think? Do you think that maybe this creature could be a macaque, mistaken identity, or maybe a great ape that's extinct? They're not extinct, but escaped?
Well, it's hard to say, maybe, but I would doubt it, just because, the locals would be used to macaques, if they see them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And as for the escaped ape, I doubt it, but who knows? It's possible, I suppose. But I would highly doubt it, only because the locals would see them all the time and be familiar with the macaque anyways.
Well, I'm going to state a fact, and then I'm going to give you a question afterwards. It says the Hibagon's mostly known from a series of sightings from 1970 to 1982. The first sighting, they claim, was reported in 1970 by those children that were seen eating the mushrooms. Well, it says after 1982, a researcher says that, this is his opinion, he claims that the Hibagon stopped being sighted and that there's no reliable reports after 1982. So, Nick, what do you think the people were seeing, and do you think this is an absurd comment to make coming from a cryptozoologist?
Definitely. I think that it is an absurd comment. And I think that the people probably were seeing some sort of cryptid. See, there are people in the paranormal community which can get rather lazy sometimes. Usually what happens is they go out and land a big case, and then they beat that case to death and ride it for their entire careers, and then they get rather intellectually lazy and don't look for anything else. So I think that's what this paranormal investigator or cryptozoologist, some nobody, I don't know, whatever they did.
Well, like I was telling Nick, we were talking about this before the show. I find it highly improbable and highly unaccepting of the main cryptozoological community to say that some creature just fell off the face of the earth and they stopped being sighted. I could go on the internet right now and find a bunch of reports from the 90s, at least through after 1982. What do you think, Tim? Like Nick said, maybe the people take one case and beat the hell out of it until their whole entire life?
That's probably it. Yeah, I think, like you said, that's probably it. They just focus solely on one case.
Well, I have the most famous Hibagon sighting. It occurred on August 15th, 1974. It sounds like the popular year with Hibagon, 74. Well, a motorist spotted a large blackish animal walking near the road on four legs. When the creature sensed the approaching vehicle, it's reported of standing up and trying to walk away on two legs. The shocked driver stopped the car and snapped a photo of the creature trying to hide itself in a tree. It's called a persimmon tree. The photo is of poor quality. They call it a blob squatch, but it's received wide publicity and became probably the most famous picture of the Hibagon. Using this fact, I was going to say, Nick, sorry, I got a little sidetracked again. I'm going to show you the picture right now. When it comes time to Bigfoot pictures, I know there's a lot of blurry pictures. Sorry here. I'm just trying to show Nick something. This is the picture. Can you describe the picture to our audience of the Hibagon hiding behind the tree?
Well, there's a dense forest with a lot of shrubbery to paint the scene. And then you can see this shadowy figure of what appears to be an ape standing on two legs, or some sort of hominid standing on two legs, hiding behind a rather thick tree trunk. You could see the hand, part of the head, and one of the feet. But again, the thick shrubbery and the trees make it difficult to spot it. There's another photo where this guy's driving down the street, and he takes a picture of this.
That's the truck driver story I said earlier. Running down the road. He
took a picture of this small, shadowy. You could tell there's something running down the road. It's rather hairy. The picture is taken from somewhat of a far distance, so it's hard to tell what the creature is.
But at least there's some kind of evidence for this creature, though. You figure there's castings, footprint castings. There is different sighting reports. There's pictures. So, Nick, do you think, judging by the evidence put forward, could this creature be alive? Is it alive today? And is there any other comments you'd like to make in the last few minutes of the show?
Well, yeah, I think that the creature's probably definitely alive today, and that there's still reports being circulated out there. Like I said, I think the paranormal community just got a little lazy on this thing, and they just kind of sat back and said, well, there's no more reports coming in, so we're not going to investigate. But the problem is they're not investigating for those reports. So, of course, they're not going to get them.
So,
well, not just that, our modern society likes to focus on reality shows, too, rather than go look for a lot of
that too. I think they just kind of sat back and forgot about it in a sense.
What, Tim? You haven't been keeping up with American Idol or Teen Mom?
Nope.
Oh, yeah, me neither.
Well, in the last 3 minutes of the show, Nick, can you talk a little bit about a recap of what happened during today's show?
Well, we talked about how there are two creatures in Japan known as the Kappa and the Hibagon. The Kappa is this amphibious-like creature which the Japanese almost worship, and it allegedly kidnaps children to eat them. And it lives on the southern half of the island. There's also the Hibagon, which is basically the Japanese Bigfoot, which is a lot like the Orang Pendek and the Bukata Monkey Man, which is a very small Sasquatch, and has black fur and flesh-colored hands and a face. And that was cited roughly around the 1970s to the 1980s very heavily, but it is said that reports have died down. So that is basically the gist of the show that we had today.
Do you sense any Hibagon update here, Nick, pretty soon?
Yeah, probably. We're going to have to get some more recent reports.
To shoot down that investigation. But anyways, well, a quick note real quick before I end the show. This Saturday, me, Tim, and Nick, or at least me and Nick, will be on the Talk with Vince show for a second show this Saturday. If you're interested in checking it out, you could go to our website, bigfootspad.com, or you could go to my blog, king-sasquatch-bfpteam.blogspot.com, and the links will be on there. Again, for today's show, I'd like to thank my co-hosts for tuning into the show today and everyone that was listening or contributed. I'll let my co-hosts say their goodbyes real quick before I talk about next week's show.
All right, everybody take care.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
And again, tune in to Bigfoots Pad Paranormal this Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific time for another great episode of Bigfoots Pad Paranormal. Thanks for tuning in today, everybody.
Yep, good night.